Hello, I'm Peter Story, an assistant professor at Clark University. I'm presenting on behalf of our team from Carnegie Mellon, University of Michigan, and the University of Maryland. Today I'll be presenting our paper, Increasing Adoption of Tor Browser Using Informational and Planning Nudges. I think that one of the biggest challenges in our community is getting everyday people to actually use the privacy-enhancing technologies we create. For example, consider Tor Browser, a free and effective tool for anonymous web browsing. Given that Tor Browser can protect against many kinds of privacy threats, one might expect Tor Browser to be widely adopted. However, work I presented at PETS last year showed that fewer than 3% of survey respondents used Tor Browser in the previous week. However, this discrepancy shouldn't be very surprising, given what we know about cognitive and behavioral biases. For example, our results suggest that people underestimate their susceptibility to privacy risks and underestimate the strength of Tor Browser's protections. Research suggests that behavioral nudges can help counter our biases. There are many types of nudges, but we deployed two types of nudges in our study. We used a nudge based on protection motivation theory to help people form more accurate perceptions of threats to their privacy and to better understand how Tor Browser can protect against those threats. We also used nudges based on implementation intentions to help people remember to use Tor Browser and to overcome obstacles to using Tor Browser. We presented these nudges to participants as part of an online survey, which I'll show in a few slides. At this point, hopefully you have a sense of why we want to increase adoption of Tor Browser and how we hope to use nudges to do that. We conducted a longitudinal field experiment to test our nudges, and I'll describe the design of that experiment next. And then finally, I'll describe the results of our experiment. We recruited 537 participants for our study using the prolific crowdsourcing platform. We used a screening survey to recruit participants who we thought would be more motivated to use Tor Browser. And specifically, we selected participants who expressed interest in protection against the kinds of privacy threats that Tor Browser can protect against, like preventing advertisers from seeing the websites they visit. We also required participants to have used another privacy-enhancing technology in the previous week. This chart shows the path of participants through our study. We used Survey 1 to recruit participants and to filter out people who didn't meet our screening criteria. 37% of Survey 1 respondents met our screening criteria, and so were invited to Survey 2. In Survey 2, we randomly assigned participants to treatment conditions. In the control group, participants were not nudged to use Tor Browser. In the protection motivation theory only group, participants saw only the PMT-based nudge. And in the protection motivation theory plus action planning condition, participants were also encouraged to form plans to use Tor Browser in the week ahead. In Survey 3, some participants in the PMT plus action planning condition were also shown a coping planning nudge designed to help them overcome challenges to using Tor Browser. In Survey 3, 4, and 5, we measured whether participants had used Tor Browser. Comparing usage rates between the treatment groups showed us the effect of our nudges. In the next slides, I'll explain our nudges in more detail. This text is part of our PMT-based nudge. It's primarily intended to influence perceptions of threat susceptibility, although it also touches on threat severity. We focused on salient, well-defined privacy threats from the literature, and we also described the limitations of the tools participants might already be familiar with, so that participants wouldn't think they were already protected. Our PMT nudge also included this text, which introduced participants to Tor Browser and reassured them that it is effective at protecting browsing privacy. Then we explained how simple it is to use Tor Browser, and we offered participants the opportunity to install it. We also included an FAQ to debunk common misconceptions. Our action planning template encouraged participants to use Tor Browser for up to 3 privacy-sensitive browsing activities. The template helped people form and mentally rehearse their plan in an if-then format. And it also included an opportunity for participants to commit to their plan. We administered the protection motivation theory and action planning treatments in Survey 2. After a week, we followed up with Survey 3. And in Survey 3, we asked about use of Tor Browser and about any challenges encountered when trying to use it. For participants who are randomly selected for the coping planning condition, we showed them a coping plan template based on a challenge they encountered, if any. we designed plan templates corresponding to websites being extremely slow, websites not working, and other types of challenges described by participants. This plan corresponds to the most commonly encountered challenge, extreme website slowness. The plan explains the possible source of the problem and a potential solution, clicking the New Circuit button. We also encourage participants to mentally rehearse using the New Circuit button to fix this problem. So to recap, we administered the treatments shown on the previous slides over the course of multiple weeks. We measured the effect of the treatments by comparing use of Tor browser between different treatment conditions in the week following treatment administration. For example, to determine the effect of the protection motivation theory treatment that we administered in Survey 2, in Survey 3, we asked whether participants had used Tor browser in the previous week. Comparing usage rates between participants in the control and PMT-only groups revealed the effect of the PMT treatment. We found that our PMT-based nudge made participants more likely to use Tor browser in the following week. This was a statistically significant, small-sized effect. We also tested for a difference between the PMT-only and PMT plus action planning treatments, but this difference was not statistically significant. We administered our coping planning intervention in Survey 3 to participants who reported encountering challenges using Tor browser. So we checked for an effect the following week by analyzing the Survey 4 data. In our analysis, we focused on those who encountered challenges, since only those participants were eligible to complete coping plans. Our data showed that our coping planning intervention made participants 2.6 times more likely to use Tor browser in the following week, a medium-sized effect, and this difference was statistically significant. In addition to measuring whether our interventions would increase adoption of Tor browser in the subsequent week, we also wanted to know whether they would have effects in the long term. So 3 weeks after Survey 4, we invited participants to respond to Survey 5. And although Survey 5 was optional, over 90% of the participants who completed our experiment also completed Survey 5. Even 5 weeks later, the PMT-based treatment still had an effect, with participants in the PMT-only condition more than twice as likely to use Tor browser than those in the control group. However, we no longer saw an effect from our coping planning-based intervention. To summarize, we found that our protection motivation theory-based nudge resulted in both short and long-term increases in Tor browser use. However, our action planning-based nudge didn't significantly affect people's use of Tor browser. Since we recruited participants who were already familiar with private browsing and VPNs, they might have already been in the habit of using privacy tools for privacy-sensitive tasks. So future work could investigate whether our action plans might be more helpful to less tech-savvy people. And finally, although we found that our coping planning-based nudge resulted in a short-term increase in Tor browser use, we didn't see an effect after several weeks had passed. And the temporary increase might have been due to people testing out their coping plans. So although the coping plans may not have increased use of Tor browser, they might have helped people use Tor browser more effectively. So future work should explore this. As part of our action planning treatment, we encourage participants to list privacy-sensitive activities that might use Tor browser for. 231 participants wrote a total of 598 activities. Most commonly, people wrote that they preferred not to disclose the activity. So in these cases, we can't tell the nature of the activity, or even if the participant had something in mind. And since participants might be less likely to disclose more sensitive activities, the frequencies of the activities are informative for showing the diversity of different activities. We coded almost 30 different activities, so I'll just give examples of 4 of the most common. 55 activities were about shopping. For example, one participant described browsing for gifts for my fiancé. 49 activities were about financial activities. For example, another participant described mortgage shopping. And it was also common for people to describe reading the news. Finally, some participants described using Tor browser to access not safe for work content, like pornography. The variety of activities that our participants described shows that people can have many different reasons for using Tor browser. In Survey 3, we asked participants who tried to use Tor browser what challenges, if any, they'd encountered when trying to do so. More than half of participants reported encountering some form of challenge. Most commonly, people described encountering extremely slow websites. Participants in our coping planning condition who selected this challenge were given the plan template I showed earlier, which explained how to use the new circuit button. All 26 participants we showed this plan filled it out. When we followed up a week later, half reported having clicked the new circuit button in the elapsed time. Although we didn't directly measure the efficacy of people's plans, several participants confirmed that their plans helped them overcome challenges. For example, one participant wrote that clicking on New Circuit for this site works. It was a definite help with faster loading speeds. In conclusion, we found that our nudge based on protection motivation theory increased people's use of Tor browser even after 5 weeks. This suggests that Tor browser is meeting a need for people, and that outside of our study, Tor browser adoption can increase significantly from where it is today. However, participants commonly encountered challenges using Tor browser, like websites being extremely slow or blocking Tor browser users. And although neither our action nor coping planning nudges increased use of Tor browser in the long term, they might still help people use Tor browser more effectively, so future work should investigate this. Finally, we showed that people want to use Tor browser for a variety of benign activities, like online shopping and reading the news. To the extent that website operators can improve the usability of their sites in Tor browser, they should do so. A good first step is to simply try loading the website you're responsible for in Tor browser to see what the user experience is like. As Tor browser becomes more popular, websites that work in Tor browser are going to have a competitive advantage, and privacy-conscious visitors may favor websites that work well in Tor browser. Thank you very much for listening to my talk. If my talk interested you, please read our paper where we describe our findings in more detail.